Legends, welcome back to another team preview. This week, the team we are going to look at is the Cronulla Sharks. And to join me all the way from his bedroom, Jai Watkins from the Blindside Fantasy Analysis. How are you, mate?
Dude, I am cruising and I'm so pumped for this podcast. Deep as into NRL Fantasy preseason. It's my first one, actually. Started in round 3 last year, so I did not know how intense it was going to be. But, mate, I'm loving it. As soon as fantasy chat starts going and anything footy starts going, I'm all over it.
Mate, it's a pleasure to have you here. You've, of course, you are repping the Cronulla Sharks retro jersey. I've got my Origin jersey on, trying to level the playing field a little bit. That sky blue. So, look, you're wearing it better. You're a mad Sharks fan, and we love it. But let's get straight into it. We're going to go through a few of the ins and outs for 2025 for Cronulla Sharks. Now, when it comes to the 2025 games, there is only two big ones. Adam Fanua-Blake, of course, from the Warriors, and Hohepa, I hope I said that correctly, Puru from the Canberra Raiders as well. Now, when we go into the 2025 losses, there's Dale Finucane, Sam Healy, Royce Hunt, and Jack Williams are the notable ones there. So, mate, some good gains, of course. Fanua-Blake being the big one there, and we saw through the trials last night, time of recording last night, the try he scored, he looked really good. Mate, do you think your gains are better than your losses? Are you sad about some of the losses? Take us through a little bit of that.
Yeah, I'm sad about Royce Hunt, but more sad about Jack Williams. Man,
Yeah.
I wanted him to be our lock for so long, but what can you do? You got Cameron McInnes there. You can't really hold Jack Williams behind him too much longer. You got to kind of set the bird free. So I can understand why he went. I think he's going to be dynamic if he gets the start at the Eels. So I was a bit dirty there, but maybe picked up AFB, arguably the best prop in the comp last year. I think he looks on fire. His post-contact meters were insane in that trial, and the way he just formulates in that Sharks pack, I was getting chills watching him. To be completely honest with you, I think Sharks are a genuine premiership threat now with him in the side, and I've got nothing but praise for him.
Mate, I don't tend to agree with you, and I don't like agreeing with you. But I have to say, with Fanua-Blake, mate, you guys are looking very, very good. I can't wait to see that short ball from Hines to Fanua-Blake, 10 metres out, mate. That is going to be absolutely sensational. But let's get into our predicted 1 to 17s, where we think these players will play, if we have anything different. But let's start off at the back. Now, we've got fullback, of course. I think it's Will Kennedy. There was a lot of talk last year that Nico may be moving to fullback. That's not going to happen. I think Will Kennedy locks up that spot. If he does have a couple of quiet games, there is, of course, Cade Dykes in the wings. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Mate, have you got Kennedy as well?
Yeah, I got Kennedy starting, and I think, like you said, he's going to have a few dates before they probably look to consider someone else. And I've got eyes on Liam Eisen as well. He's fit, pushing for Cade Dykes, but I'd definitely say Dykes is higher in the pecking order, but Liam Eisen's a stud as well, so whoever they want to give the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Let's jump into the wingers, of course. Katoa and Mulatalo. They've been doing this for so long now, and they're two of the best in the comp. Katoa with an injury, I believe, at the moment. Is he fit for round 1? Do you know?
I'm not too sure his status at the moment, whether or not he's 100% for round 1.
Yeah.
I'll just keep monitoring that as well. I'm sure they'll probably push him all the way until missing out on Las Vegas would be pretty heavy. So I don't think they'll really give him right up until kickoff. But yeah,
absolutely.
I agree with you. I think Katoa and Mulatalo look like the solid setup there at the moment.
Yeah, I think for the Cronulla Sharks, your team is not going to differ too much from last year. We'll jump into the centres, of course. We've got Iro and Raymond. I don't think yours is going to change too much there. They're pretty solid. They're two of your best players. Do you have anything different for us in the centres?
Absolutely not. They're solid. They'll be there all year.
Yeah, beautiful. Let's move into the halves. Of course, Tricky Trindle and Nathan. Nico Hines, mate. It's so hard to tell the difference. They're both that good. Nico Hines at 7, of course. Well, I think that's going to be the 6 and 7 this year for the near future, of course, barring injury. With Atkinson, possibly a shout. It just all depends on Tricky's form heading into this season. Do you agree, mate?
Yeah, I agree. I think they'll. Atkinson's probably put a bit more against himself as well now that he's signed with another club. I think he'll definitely be in our bench utility. I did have Tuku Hatapua
Mm.
possibly entering the rotation, but I think now Atkinson is probably sure to get that 14. I guess in the halves rotation, though, I loved Heinz's try assists were him playing a ball running half style role when it was he set up a good try for Stone Street out on the wing, a good little looping try assist out there. And that was more or less like a fullback link run. And I think I would really, really love to see Trindle at halfback and Nico Hines at 5'8". I think that
Yeah,
would be
nice.
a way better combo.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Tricky can hold that more structured role and give Hines a chance to run the ball. I think that's a
Yeah.
scary prospect. Let's move into the front row, of course. For me, it's going to be Fanua Blake. He gets the start. And Oregon Kafusi. Love Tommy Hazelton, but I would rather him as an impact player. So I'll start with Oregon Kafusi and Adam Fanua Blake there. And, of course, my hooker, Blake Brayley. Anything different?
Nah, front row, it's completely the same. But I will say Adam Fanua Blake, Dally M 2025.
Listen to him. Oh, it started already. All right, let's jump into the back row. Britton Nickera and Teague Wilton speak for themselves. Nickera, one of the best second rowers, one of the best hole runners in the game. Every time I watch him, I marvel at how well he can run a hole. He runs a line so great. Mate, do you think they're the starting second rowers?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's no one better than them in the squad at the moment. I think for sure Nicker has got some good sort there. I think Wilton's one to watch as well. Typically
Mm,
in fantasy, it's more of a fantasy conflation, but it's relevant to genuine NRL as well. He sees a fantasy points uptick in terms of involvement when Trindle's the main playmaker. So I'd
wow.
imagine if we do see a Trindle halfback role, you will see a lot more Wilton involvement in 2025, which would heighten both sides of the field effectively, which I think is what we need. We don't want to get
Yeah.
too one dimensional at Cronulla, always relying on AFB or always going to Hines. And I think if we can just spread ourselves this year, it'll be massive. So yeah, I think Wilton and Nicker are both really strong to
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicker is one that I always end up bringing into my fantasy team. He's so consistent and gets me so many points. And of course, Cameron McInnes to finish in that lock position. I don't think anyone's chasing him down. But let's have a bit of a look at our bench makeup now. Interesting what you said about 14 before. I actually have a bit of a smoky for the 14 role, and it's not Atkinson. I actually really like Peru, who's come over from the Raiders, and I'd love to see him in that 14 role. I think he can bring that added ball playing ability, as well as he's got a bit of size to him too. So I think he'd be great at 14. The rest of my bench is Hamlin, ULA, Toby Rudolph. I think Tommy Hazelton will be in there as well. I think you just go with a couple of them. It's really hard. I don't think they second row wise, I think a lot of their props are going to be on the bench, but second row is not so much. So I think they're really expecting Teague and probably Nico to play that 80-minute style. You can probably throw Hemwin Uele into
Mm.
the second row if you needed to. But mate, what's your bench makeup look like?
I'd probably say I'm going to go with kind of stick to solid, and I'm going to say Atco at 14 in the
Mm,
utility, but I would like to see Peru there as well.
yeah.
He was a stud last year. I think he played finals in New South Wales Cup, and he looked really good. But I would like the rest of them to be Tommy Hazelton,
Mm.
Toby Rudolph, and CSC for Talakai. I think
Oh, yes,
Talakai will
of
be
course.
a great yeah, introduction. He seems to play in that roaming lock role and to take minutes away from Cameron McInnes because Teague Wilton and Britton Nicker often just play 80-minute games. So I don't mind that, to be honest. He's a wrecking ball, and if he can just float around the ruck, that's deadly. The Sharks rotation is insane. You could nearly start every single player they have on the bench in another team. So very, very excited.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Of course, lots of depth there as well at Cronulla. I think if you guys have injuries, you will be in really good stead because there are lots of players coming through that we know can fill the void. So we won't go through the whole list of your emergency players, but there are a lot there. But mate, that's it for our predicted lineup. So let's jump into your favorite. Let's talk NRL fantasy now. For those that may not know you, those that live under a rock, you obviously run a fantasy page. You're quite good at it. You got the great knowledge as well, mate. Can we go through some players from the Sharks and some prices and we'll see if we've got them in our teams, whether people should jump on them or not. So let's start off with Nicho Hynes, mate. Of course, premium option. A lot of people talking about pairing him with Cleary at the moment, playing in Vegas. Did pick up an injury in the trial match. So interesting stuff, mate. Thoughts on Nicho?
Yeah, that injury, I don't think it's going to be too big in terms of his actual involvement in round one, but even the tiniest niggle lost him in play kicking duties and goal kicking duties to Tricky, which I think is, but we did see even the slightest niggle around that groin region. It seems to be an adductor. I'm pretty sure it was the injury focus, just a bit of a strain there, but that a general way to handle those kind of injuries is to take away kicking responsibility. That's enough for me to say no to Hynes personally. Yeah. So he was considered risky for us. But coming in at 825K, you pay 55 more K, you've got Nathan Cleary. Yeah. Or if you want to drop down to start making value, you've got Cameron Munster. But priced at a 60 average, disappointing 2024. He already had a lot stacked against him, and this was the last little bit of news we needed to come in. So got some stats and stuff here as well. But yeah, what's your interest? Do you have any interest in him at all?
He was in my team before the injury. I actually had him paired with Cleary. I was able to fit both of them in Yoin as well, and I felt like I had a really solid team going. I like to, we spoke a bit about on the Roosters pod, but I like to stack my mids and my halves, and I had both him and Cleary, and I was feeling good, but I think that injury has put me off a little bit, so I'll probably be selling Nicho quite early.
Oh, yeah. I think it's the smarter play. Yeah. Like, look, he does have the potential for upside. I do, Talking League spoke about this a little bit, and I thought it was very intelligent perspective because a lot of people were just writing him off without looking into it. And from my perspective, they had a good take, was that you can pitch the argument for avoiding Cleary as, oh, he's next to Trindle, he's going to go bad. But he was next to Trindle for a start of last year, and he was outscoring Cleary. It wasn't until he actually hurt his calf that the decrease in scoring occurred. So if that injury or he was actually fit coming into the season, you would argue that there's a strong potential there that what if he was to do it again? But you really needed certainty that he was ready to go. And I think this is just enough for me to be massive trap. Stay away from him.
Mate, let's jump into another player now, one that might be hot on some people's list. It always is for me. I spoke about him before, Britton Nikora, another premium price there in the edge. I think I wouldn't be starting with him. I think you can get better options to start with. But, mate, take us your thoughts through Nikora.
Yeah, he is similar to Wilton. Both him and Wilton seem to perform stronger when Tricky is the main game manager. Yeah. And I'd imagine, I'm pretty sure Trindle plays on Wilton's side, but that unlocks Nicho to play directly on Nikora's side rather than managing kicking the ball so much. So it does improve Nikora as well. Coming in at 692K, he usually tops out at about 750 at max. And typically he's similar to the prospects of, say, Joseph Tarpany, where they kind of start slow and shed a tiny bit of value. And then there's a time just before the origin period where the non-affiliated players are ready to buy. And then that's when I tend to jump on a pod Nikora. So for me, I will keep that door open this year, but he's definitely capable of explosive scores, but he does them in purple patches. So if he can go from, like, say, a 5-6 game 40 average and shed 70 to 80K of value, you get him near 600K right at origin time. Throw him in.
Very juicy. Mate, another premium option, of course, in the mids, Adam Fanua-Blake, new club. Can he reach the heights that he did at the Warriors? Mate, thoughts on Adam?
I don't think so. Not for fantasy. No way. I think that the risk here is he's moving from a pack where his minutes on the field were required to a pack where his minutes on the field will be less. What I think you'll see with Adam Fanua-Blake, if you didn't notice it in that trial game, is he's lost a lot of weight. And I think the aim there is for him to play less minutes. But to do that, it kind of seems counterproductive that, oh, well, why would you lose weight if you're going to play less minutes? But to play that style of game where you're like a 45 to 50-minute player and that's it, and you're consistent every single week, you have to be somewhat slim and somewhat fit to be able to do that for 23, 24 rounds outside the buys for the year. So my guess is that he turns into a 50-minute overall average at prop. He's probably not going to be a buy to start the season, but he's definitely worth watching. You know, if we have an injury to some of that, an Oregon Kafusi, or a Hazelton or something like that, and we get a bit of a stack up there, and then his demand increases, then for sure he's someone I'll look at. But yeah, for me, he's an avoid to start the year.
Yeah, for sure. Mate, next one I want to talk about, Cam McInnes. Has been fantasy relevant in the past, is getting a bit older, and with age does sometimes comes deterioration. 700K for him, can play in the mid, doesn't have the hooker duel at the moment because hasn't played there for a few games. Interesting one, McInnes, because I think, as you said, if Talakai gets in that bench spot, he could play a bit of lock as well, potentially taking McInnes's minutes. Mate, is McInnes one for you?
He always shows promise at some point in the year. For me, he's probably one of the most unluckiest fantasy prospects in terms of he would be a 55, 60 plus point scorer with his efficiency in defense, and he's capable of playing 80 minutes, which is insane, even at his age. Like, he did it last year a few times, and he can do it, and he doesn't slow down. He's just a tackle bot, but it's a typical everyone shares this aspect in the prop rotation, and anyone that's sharing a spot in the starting team with someone that can take minutes from on the bench, they all cannibalize each other. So really, for me, I stay away from any forward packs that have this kind of ultra dominance where there's so many players competing for minutes. And I think what we might see with McInnes is that he will likely be the exact same price at the end of the season that he is right now. So that's my guess on McInnes. He won't move at all. He'll just steady.
Yeah, crazy. All right, mate. Let's talk about Kale Iro. Now, last year set the world alight in the fantasy game. He was one of mine that I kept all year. I thought he came of age really well. He's moved to 619K after that massive season. For me, it's just too much to pay for a center this early on. Do you agree?
Yeah. Completely agree, especially when you've got literally a copy-paste version of him at Melbourne Storm in Jack Howarth.
Exactly.
For close to 200 grand less. So that's where I'm going as Jack Howarth this year. But with this said, like, he averaged 55 points with 5 tries in his last 7 games. So if he was to average, say, something similar, then he could present 9 points of value. So there is a world there where it's like, whoa, Kale Iro could potentially go up in value if he can match that try scoring output or something similar. And you could say conservatively he could hit a 50 average. But then you remind yourself that this is a second-year rookie center in the NRL. Is he capable of being a 50-plus average NRL fantasy player? I highly doubt it. Like, that space is reserved for people like a Herbie Farnworth, or say, for example, it'll happen this year with Dylan Lucas, someone that plays in the edge but has this center edge dual DPP. So I don't see it. I think, though, he's probably worth a watch if he steeps 2 down in price and Sharks are pushing for a run home in finals or whatever. He could definitely present some value later in the year. But yeah, early season, no way for me.
Yeah, for sure. A couple more before we move into our next part. But, mate, Blake Brayley, now 582K, bit of a pod option in my opinion. I think if you are looking for a hooker that I don't think will be owned by too many, I don't have it in front of me. Oh, sorry, I do. 2.9% owned at the moment. So very, very much pod territory. Blake Brayley, 582K. The only issue I have is Brayley's game is very much stand, pass. I think Brayley needs to start developing a running game a bit more. If he can start doing what Damien Cook did, dashing out a dummy half, heading towards the line, become a beach sprinter, that would help. But if Brayley could channel that, I think he'd be an absolute buy. Mate, any interest in Brayley?
Nah, not until I see that. So if I seen some of that kind of activity and give him a 3-date rule where it's like, well, he's 55 plussing or 50 plussing for 3 games in a row, and we can see enough evidence, I probably would even leave it longer for him, because he's just been a plotter in terms of fantasy performance for literally since he started. So he 0.55 projected PPM I've got him for this year. So he'll probably likely average around 43, where last year he averaged 43.6. I think he is a reliable option, but for me, he's low priority. So he's going to score you the same scores every single week. But in a year where we've got hookers in abundance, it's like you've got Peter Mamazoulis, you've got Corey Pakes now, who looks likely to get that start. These guys are sub 400K, could possibly score more points than him, and I've got so much value to make. And then you've got someone, Connor Watson, your special man, who's likely going to get named at hooker. he's coming in priced underneath Harry Grant and could very well outprice Harry Grant. So, yeah, for me, there's just too many options in the market for me to dive into him.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump into a couple of cheapies, maybe some to watch as well. I don't think these guys will be doing too much playing, but if they do get on the field, very juicy options. Of course, Hart Tapua, of course, plays in the mid there, 250K. Lots of raps on this young guy if he does get a start. Apparently, big motor, big motor. It'd be interesting if he does, 250K, very cheap. I think he's just one to watch at the moment. Of course, the Puru brothers as well. Of course, H. Puru, who is your mid, he's 250K. And Puru, who plays in the halves, is also 230K. So if Puru can even land a bench spot at 230K, a little bit of a slow burn, mate. Any interest in any of these cheapies?
Hatapua is probably the one I'm most interested in. The other guys, they haven't really had the blooding in first grade yet that I would want to see to say, like, oh, okay, if they're called upon, they can step up into more responsibility. But he's definitely a rookie to watch. The dude's built like a mountain. And as you said, he can actually go. He's not just a big dude who has 25-minute impact role. Like, he could play a 50-minute spot. If called upon. It's very early in his career. I'm not suggesting in the slightest that that's going to happen this year, but he's definitely a potential cash cow, and he will get his shot benefiting from injuries, God forbid, in the forwards. And if he does get a start in this team, I wouldn't be projecting it for any more than 20 to 25 minutes, and that's not something you'd want to invest in, especially at 25K more than his starting price. You've got Royce Hunt that's just moved to the Tigers, so definitely the way I'd go.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that really wraps up our fantasy relevance for the Sharks. Probably not too much to talk about this year. I think their team is very solid. It's not a bad thing that there's not much fantasy relevance. I just think they're solid across the park. They're going to get the job done. If you like some of the players that we mentioned, please jump on, but don't take our advice as gospel. We're not experts. Well, I mean, Blindside is, but I'm not an expert. So, if he gets it wrong, I'll give you his address later. But let's jump into a bit of the Sharks, mate, and what we think about how their season's going to go, where we think they may end up. Now, for me, I've got the Sharks, and look, you're going to love me. I already know you do, but you're going to love this. I've got the Sharks in the top four. Every year they're around there, and I think with Adam Fanua-Blake added into that squad, it's such a big coup. And I think he is going to do wonders to this team. I know it's a front rower and everyone's going to go, well, front rowers don't change the game, blah, blah, blah. That's your halves, that's your spine. But he is the sort of player that has the impact and the leadership to change this side. And I think what Fanua-Blake brings is not only the mongrel, but the grunt as well. And the Sharks issue, and look, it's widely well known, but over the past few seasons, it's getting past that second week of finals. It's getting past those finals games. The prelim you made it to last year, which was massive because you haven't made it to the prelim in a couple of seasons. But to get over that hurdle and get back into the grand final is the Sharks' biggest obstacle. And I think with Fanua-Blake, they may be able to do that. Mate, thoughts?
Dude, I completely agree. One thing I noticed, I was literally this is what I was paying attention to in their first trial. And I know it's trial. You can always just say, look, it could just be because it's the first game of the season. Well, it's actually their second trial where they played close to their run-on squad. My thing was, are they going to play for 80 minutes? All last year in 2024, if you listen to press conferences, you watch the games, Craig Fitzgibbon is complaining about them not being turned on for the first 20 minutes of a game. Yeah. And you watch, teams rack up points on us, but then we're so dominant in our forward pack that we seem to just roll over teams, even though we're down by 20. And last night it looked the same. It was like, okay, we're down 10-0. With Raiders literally looked like they were destroying us, and we had a massive forward pack. And then, 20 minutes into the game, we somehow scraped 2 tries to get a 2-point lead and then literally destroyed them in the second half. So for me, I'm like, okay, I could easily just write that off as a trial game, but it is very indicative of what I've seen for the last 2 years, and it's exactly why we can't make finals. No team is going to win the NRL Grand Final if they're not playing for 80 full minutes and dominating on the park. And for me, Adam Fanua-Blake is the key here as well. I think that they definitely just need to pull the trigger, and the earlier in the season they do it is flip Hines and Trindle around. Tricky at half, Hines 5'8", and I think they do need to be willing to make a call to flip Kennedy and get an actual fullback in there that can do some damage. And hopefully that is Kennedy, but I'm not seeing it yet. I didn't see it in the trials, but for me, what Adam Fanua-Blake brings that I think is the best is with the Sharks, we tend to start with just hard-nosed props, and they get the job done. They could start in any team, and then we then pull on the likes of Siosifa Talakai, or then Toby Rudolph, and then Tom Hazelton, and that's our impact. Now we're starting games with impact, and then when he needs rest, we're bringing on more impact. And I think those enforcers coming off the bench and starting, and we got people like Nikora. I don't know. I don't even know if you can tell in my voice how excited I am. I have not been this excited for a Sharks team since 2016. So it's very, very exciting. And I think I said it before, Adam Fanua-Blake, 2025 Dally M. If he was up there last year with the Warriors, it's not too far of a shout to say he could be up there again with the Sharks.
Mate, I love the bias. I really do. It's an exciting time in the Shire. Very, very exciting. Leave the porch light on, you Cronulla fans. It could be happening again. It happened in 2016. What are we? Almost 10 years later, 9 years later.
Yeah.
So let's see. Can they relive the Paul Gallen and the Mick Ennis and the Luke Lewises of 2016? But only time will tell, mate. Before we finish up, let's go through a dynamite player, a player that we think is going to explode in 2025 for the Cronulla Sharks. Mate, because you're the guest, you can go first.
I'm going to have to think about this actually, because I don't want to say Adam Fanua-Blake again. I want to go he's going to blow up, Adam Fanua-Blake. I think that's established. But I'm going to probably take a punt here. I guess it's not too much of a punt, but I think we see Tricky make halfback his own, and he becomes a household name. Braden Trindle will be a household name in 2025 is my guess. And hopefully we can see Hines then come back to some form and rekindle the spark that everyone knows he's got. So, but I think it's Braden Trindle is the guy that's going to carry the Sharks this year.
Trindle will carry the Sharks and then sign with the Roosters in 2026. I love it. All right, my dynamite player for 2025 actually comes from your centres, Jesse Ramian. Fantastic player. He's done it all in the game. He's thereabouts every year. He's just a player to me that when I watch, he seems to get better as age goes on. He seems to get better. He seems to work on his game more. I just really think it's going to be a big year for Ramian. I think if the Sharks do get to, as we're talking, the grand final even, I just think it's going to be off the back of some Ramian brilliance. I think, he's still got the motor behind him to score fantastic tries. So Ramian for me is my pick, and I think he will take the Sharks deep into the finals.
Yeah, I love that call. And you've got Iro on the other side.
Yeah,
Ramian's just got a level head now. Like he started with Cronulla and got a good reputation, and then he moved to Newcastle and just couldn't really find his feet. And then I was a bit nervous signing him back again after that, but he's just been a stud for us, so reliable. He's even in the Origin conversation last year, like very fringe, but he's very capable. I think we've got how hard is it to break Origin centres, really?
For sure.
We've got fullbacks that play in the centres and all the rest of it. So if he manages to get that, that would be amazing. But look, I think you're right there. I think he could go off 2025.
Absolutely. Well, that is it for our Cronulla Sharks team preview. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, before you go, to check out Jersey Kings. Go to JerseyKingsAustralia.com. Put in your code RUCK and you will get $50 off your jerseys. Selling all your 2025 Rugby League jerseys available now. So they're selling jerseys for $150. With your code RUCK, you'll get them for $100. Now, that is an absolute bargain if you ask me. So go and check out JerseyKingsAustralia.com. Of course, head over to Stay Fancy Eyewear as well. Check out their enormous range of safety glasses. Great. They look good, and they're also perfect on the job site as well. Use the code RUCK10 for 10% off there. Stay Fancy Eyewear. Until next time, that's Blindside. I'm Joey. Be good.